So I think everyone's in agreement that Antony does need to be moved on, and to be honest, over the last few weeks I've been wondering where he actually goes, because I honestly don't even think he's good enough to go to another Premier League side. He's on £200,000 per week. United, if they are going to sell him permanently, surely won't sell him for anything less than 30-35 million. And even looking around Europe, I don't even think there's that many European sides who would take the risk on him. I mean, even if you're an Italian club or maybe Benfica or Porto, surely you can get better value for money. As it's not even just like Antony's producing a lack of output in terms of goals and assists, his whole round game seems to be dreadful, with him having an inability to beat his man 1v1, whilst his lack of ability on his right foot means he's constantly and rather predictably always looking to check inside even when there's space ahead of him, and this just slows up the attack. And to be honest, at this point I think Antony's become a liability in possession. And so I guess it's no surprise, not just that he's been linked with a move away from Old Trafford, but a lack of European interest, as it seems like the strongest link is a move back to Brazil, but only on loan for the second half of the season. And in particular, Flamengo have been talked about, with Gabriel Barbosa potentially going the other way to Old Trafford, either for a fee around €20 million or maybe even on loan. But do I think that this is a deal that United should do? But before I get into that, if you do want to see my match report on the Bayern Munich Borussia Dortmund game, my Patreon will be linked in the description below. But if you do want cheap, great quality football jerseys, go over to www.jerseyfifa.com. They have both current season and retro jerseys. I do have a few jerseys from Jersey FIFA, including this France 98 Zidane shirt, as well as a Beckham 99 Manchester United shirt, and a Brazil 98 R9 shirt as well. So if you do want to pick up some jerseys, I'll leave the link in my Instagram bio. My Instagram will be linked in the description. And if you use code ATLANTIS at checkout, you should also get a discount as well. Well, on the face of it, I'd say no. I mean, Gabriel Barbosa, he was in hot form around 2019-2020, and if he was going to come to Europe, it was probably around that time. He has gone off the boils slightly, and we can see this as in 2019-2020, he scored 27 goals in 45 games. In the 2021 season, that was 29 goals in 42 games in all competitions. And in 21-22, it was once again 29 goals, this time in 63 games. However, he has gone off the boils slightly, managing only 20 goals in 55 games in 22-23. And to be honest, I think his FB ref report shows the underlying issue. We can see that over the past 365 days, whilst he ranks very highly for things like his progressive passes, as well as for his overall pass completion rate, he's rather mediocre when it comes to his chances created, as his XG assisted is around the 50th percentile, but despite sitting in the 63rd percentile for his non-penalty XG, he ranks in just the 7th percentile for his non-penalty goals, with an absolutely massive underperformance of his non-penalty XG by 0.26 per 90. And so from this we can see that it's a decline in his clinical finishing ability, which seems to be the reason why his goal scoring has dried up. And even though he would be available for a cheapish fee because his contract runs out in 2024, I just don't think it's ideal to bring a player to the Premier League, particularly at a club like Manchester United, when we can see from the past 365 days that they are certainly not a clinical finisher in 2023. And just from watching Barbosa play, I just don't think his close control is good enough for the Premier League. If you watch him in Brazil, because it's very open, they do keep their backlines deep, but they do press aggressively, leaving a lot of space in midfield. It is a more direct game with a lot less focus on methodical possession phases, and so where Barbosa is at his best in the Brazilian league, where he's able to drop deep, receive the ball between the lines, and then look for a forward pass or to drive past a defender into the final third, I just don't see him having these sorts of spaces in the Premier League as often, and more often than not, because I think he'll mostly be deployed from the right flank in place of Antony, alongside Højlund and Rashford in the front three. He's going to be receiving the ball on the flank, being given the opportunity to stand up the fullback in a 1v1, and if Antony is poor at taking on his man, I don't think Barbosa is much of an improvement either. Also, like Antony, he's very one-footed as well. I do think he's a bit better with using his left foot coming inside, but to me, I'd rather a much more versatile player. Barbosa is kind of limited. He's certainly not a player with the pace of someone like Jeremy Doku, and I think that's what United's attack needs. But whilst I would definitely say that Gabriel Barbosa isn't the type of Antony replacement or upgrade that United need, I do think he could do a job as a third choice striker and just giving United another option off the bench. The issue is he's been in such bad finishing form, I just don't know if he's the right player to be brought in. I just think there are going to be much better options, and also bringing him in from Brazil is also a concern, as the style difference between South America and Europe is very big, and so how he'll adapt to not just European football but Premier League football specifically is an unknown quantity, and I just think there are better options for United to potentially bring in who can provide better competition to Martial and Højlund. But if it's not Gabriel Barbosa, who do I think should be the Antony replacement in January? Well, certainly come the summer, I think looking at players like Rafinha and Leroy Sané would be the style but also the calibre of winger that United need. Now, Leroy Sané may be one to avoid. Obviously he's got the City background, but he's also had a few problems in the Bayern Munich dressing room, and I just don't think it's a good idea to bring someone who's had previous issues in his current dressing room into this chaotic United one. And so personally, come the summer, I think United should be looking to target Rafinha. I think he'd be attainable for around 70 to 75 million pounds. And would be the perfect winger for Ten Hag's 4-3-3, and most importantly a massive upgrade on Antony. But with Rafinha unlikely to leave in January, and United unlikely to spend that much in January, what are some cheaper alternatives for United to consider for the second half of the season? One option could be Napoli's 30-year-old Italian winger, Matteo Politano. Now Politano is very stylistically similar to Antony. He's a left-footed right winger who you wouldn't say is blessed with blistering pace, and he's always looking to come inside onto his left foot, whether this is to deliver a cross from a wide position, or play a pass or take a shot from a central position. But compared to Antony, Politano is a lot more considered and composed in possession, having much better close ball control, making him a lot harder to dispossess than Antony is. And whilst Antony's weaker right foot is pretty much unusable, Politano actually has a decent right foot, meaning that his play is a lot less predictable. Whilst he will look to come inside on his left foot to release a shot, he can also cut down the line and play a cross or take a shot across goal with his right. And this is definitely reflected statistically for Politano, as when compared against every other attacking midfielder and winger in Europe's top 5 leagues over the past 365 days, playing just over 1,600 minutes for Napoli, Politano ranks between the 85th and 95th percentile range for his passes into the final third, passes into the penalty area, crosses into the penalty area, and his overall progressive passes, whilst also ranking pretty decently for his XG assisted around the 65th percentile, and also ranking pretty high for his other pass completion metrics as well. Now, whilst Politano certainly isn't a dribbling master like a Jeremy Doku, who specialises in take-ons, he is a player more like Bernardo Silva, who can specialise in progressing the ball up the pitch, as seen as he ranks around the 85th to 95th percentile mark for his progressive carries into the final third, as well as having a fairly good tackle during take-on percentage around the 85th percentile mark, meaning that unlike Antony, Politano is a player who rarely loses possession. And whilst he definitely doesn't rank incredibly highly for his successful take-ons, he is very good at progressing the ball via carrying it into space, whilst also having the progressive passing ability as well. And so on the face of it, you could make the argument that Matteo Politano is the type of player that they thought Antony would be. And given that he is in the twilight of his career, now 30 years old, and come the end of the season will only have 1 year left on his Napoli contract, it seems like he should be available for a relatively decent price as well. Now I think the perfect option for United would be a loan deal to the end of the season, maybe pay Napoli £3 to £4 million for the loan fee. His wages would probably be around £80,000 per week, and he would definitely come in as an upgrade on Antony. In terms of a transfer fee, I think United should be paying around 15 to 20 million, but £25 million as a max. Now the obvious downside with Politano is of course his age. I mean, he's in the peak of his career, and so you certainly wouldn't expect him to reach a world-class level. And I'd also say that Politano is a certain style of winger, more of a Bernardo Silva on the flank than a Jeremy Doku. And whilst that may benefit United against deep compact defensive units, it may not be ideal if Ten Hag's looking to use more of a transitional approach. And two other options who I think would bring a lot more pace to the attack would be Nico Williams at Athletic Bilbao and Chris Füllkrug at Stuttgart. Nico Williams is a younger brother of Iñaki Williams. He's only 21 years old. Chris Füllkrug at Stuttgart is slightly older, 25 years old, and both players are certainly wingers who I could see making the move to elite level clubs. Nico Williams reminds me a lot of a young Ousmane Dembele, having that same kind of languid running style, but also being extremely two-footed to the point where you can't really tell which one is his weaker. And he certainly has the pace and the dribbling ability of Ousmane Dembele, maybe not to that level, but you can definitely see the potential there. With him also being two-footed, he can play on either flank and be just as effective. But for Ten Hag's United, you imagine he'd be starting from the right wing, and he would certainly play as a natural winger, holding his width rather than someone moving in field, but he'd also be a lot more direct than either Antony or Politano, rather than always looking to come inside onto his left foot. Williams has the dribbling ability, but most importantly the blistering acceleration to drive down the outside and look to get to the byline, and I think this is something United desperately lack from the right, as with neither Dalot or Wan-Bissaka behind, United don't really have that kind of player on the right flank who can take on a player quickly and whip in a cross into the box. and I think Nico Williams could offer that. And once you also factor in that at this current point in time, Nico Williams' contract with Athletic Bilbao will expire at the end of the season, it really seems like a no-brainer. However, Williams is far from the finished article, and I do worry whether he has the physicality to perform to the same level in the Premier League as he does in La Liga. Also, by looking at his FB ref report, you can see some concerning underlying metrics, such as the fact that he ranks incredibly low when it comes to his overall pass completion rates, he doesn't complete a high volume of short passes, and his progressive passing ability is non-existent. He does rank fairly decently for his XG assisted in the 66th percentile, though his non-penalty goals and his non-penalty XG do leave a lot to be desired for. And so statistically anyway, you can see that Nico Williams' dribbling and his ball carrying are pretty much elite level, and so if you are bringing him in, he would be coming in as someone like Jeremy Doku, but maybe around 2 or 3 years behind in development. As not only is Doku a very physically strong player, but his decision making and composure has also improved massively over the years, and I think both of these areas are Nico Williams' biggest problems at the moment. But despite being available on a free at the end of the season, or for around £10 million in January if he doesn't extend his current contract with Athletic Bilbao, I still think that Williams is a bit raw and not ready to come in and nail down a starting spot for United just yet. Also, considering there are reports that he is commanding around £100,000 a week, signing Williams either in January or at the end of the season will still have certain drawbacks. Chris Fulreich, on the other hand, is a different style of winger to both Politano and Williams. Whilst Matteo Politano is fairly limited in only really being able to play from the right, Chris Fulreich, like Nico Williams, is a lot more versatile, comfortable picking up the ball on the right, left, or even centrally between the lines. He's also quicker than Politano, and so would be a better player in the transition because of his ability to drive into space with the ball at his feet, but Fulreich is also a very good technical winger as well, reminding me of someone like Marco Reus, not just in his technique but also in offering ball progression via his dribbles, ball carrying, and his progressive passing as well, as his FB ref report shows, but he's also a creative threat in the final third as well, and we can see this as over the past 365 days when compared against every other winger and attacking midfielder in Europe's top 5 leagues, Fulreich ranks in the 88th percentile for his XG assisted, whilst also sitting between the 80th and 90th percentile range for his short and medium pass completion rates as well. He's also sitting around the 90th percentile for his successful take-ons, progressive carries, and his carries into the final third, showcasing just how good Fulreich is with the ball at his feet. Now, Fulreich certainly isn't elite at this moment in time, but he's a sort of player who, like Leandro Trossard at Arsenal, can really develop and start to blossom into a top quality player as he gets into his mid to late 20s. The 25-year-old Stuttgart winger is certainly the most complete of the 3 options, and if he improves his ability to get into goal scoring positions, as well as taking more of those chances as well, then you'd have to say that he definitely has the most potential. But neither Nico Williams or Chris Fulreich really convinced me that they'd be good enough to be the starting winger at United, certainly over the long run, and so it may be better for both of them to first go to mid-table to top half Premier League clubs, like maybe Brighton for Fulreich, and even Tottenham would be a good move for Nico Williams, as an alternative winger to both Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson on either flank. Politano signed in January for maybe a year or 2.5, to me seems like a great deal. Anywhere from £15 to £20 million in January I think would be a good deal, even though ideally it would be a loan for the second half of the season, because this would allow United to go out and bring in a more expensive, better quality right winger, like a Rafinha or a Michael Elise come the summer. Matteo Politano certainly wouldn't be the big name signing that a lot of Uniteds want to replace Antony, but I think he would be a reliable, cost-effective, instant upgrade on Antony, with the Italian being the exact type of profile that Ten Hag wants from a left-footed right winger, and with him still only being 30, 31 come the summer, he's still around his peak ages, and ultimately would be a much better option than Gabriel Barbosa. So let me know what you think of Matteo Politano and Gabriel Barbosa in the comment section below. Check out some of my other videos which will be linked in the description, and make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when my videos come out.